If I had to go back in time and lose 90 pounds all over again, what would I do? This is going to require tea. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Danny Taylor, co-owner of VeganProteins Online Coaching. If you're interested in getting the best physique results possible as a vegan without all of the nonsense and noise and BS advice, go ahead and hit subscribe because we put out new stuff every week. So some of you probably know this, but a lot of you do not. I actually was obese. Yes, when I was growing up, I reached a top weight of 215 pounds, and it was shortly after I went vegan in 2002 that I started losing some of that weight, and then I deliberately started out on a weight loss journey where I ultimately ended up losing 90 pounds, and I have more or less kept that off for 20 years. This is not to say that that journey was perfect, because if I'm being totally honest, I did so many things wrong, and ultimately I did get where I wanted to go, which was a lean, sort of sculpted looking physique with muscle on it. I got there, but oh my God, did I make so many mistakes along the way? And I was thinking, like, if I was talking to myself back then now, like, what would I say? What would I tell them to do? And I know that there's probably plenty of you who are in a similar boat who feel like you have a lot of weight that you'd like to lose and you just don't even know where to start. So that's what this video is for. Like I said, I grew up overweight. By the time I was 16 years old, I was 215 pounds. My family ate a very particular kind of way. We didn't have a lot of money. Unhealthy food is very cheap. We ate a lot of it. I genuinely thought that it was just my genetics that made my body size and shape what it was. While that's not entirely untrue, that genetics definitely do play a role, I think lifestyle plays a much bigger role than a lot of us want to give it credit for, because it's easier to just say, no, this is just my DNA saying I'm this way, and there's nothing I can do about it. I also was dealing with polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis, and then I went vegan, and I went vegan specifically for ethical reasons, okay? And remember, this is 2002. I went vegan for ethical reasons. I was already vegetarian. That's worth noting, that I was 215 pounds as a vegetarian. I wasn't trying to lose weight. I was just trying to change my lifestyle to make it more in line with my ethics and values surrounding animals. And then I went to the doctor a few months later, and they were like, you're down 30 pounds. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And that's when like a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my God, I think I can actually maybe do something about this. Because I was never like mad at the way that my body was. I just felt like maybe I drew a little bit of a short straw and wasn't too concerned about it. That was that, carried on. But when the doctor pointed that out, I was like, oh, something that I just changed, a major thing I just changed, has helped me to lose 30 pounds without trying. What will happen if I actually try? I don't say this to say veganism is a magical weight loss pill, because it's not. It is 100% not. Of course, at the time, I did not know that. I thought, wow, veganism is magic. And really, it was just that I had created a big caloric deficit for myself via cutting out dairy and cheese and eggs and things like that. But it started my journey. And from there, I was like laser focused on becoming somebody new. And I want to talk about that because that was one of the mistakes. And I gotta say, I made many mistakes that led to a lot of hardships, a lot of psychological troubles, a lot of small yo-yoing. Because I never like lost 90 pounds and gained it back. But, you know, I'd lose 90 pounds and then gain 15 back, not on purpose, you know, and I just keep kind of doing that. Well, I think one time I got back up to like 150 or something, again, not on purpose. Today, I sit about 10 to 15 pounds heavier than my lowest weight, but it is on purpose, and it is with deliberate muscle building, which is part of what I'm going to talk to. So let's get into the things I would do. The first thing I would do is I would make my plan carefully. A lot of times when we set out to achieve a new goal, we write a plan as though we are a rock star 100% of the time. Like, we wake up feeling on top of our game every single day with the ultimate motivation and dedication and discipline. And like, it's great to have that kind of optimism and enthusiasm, but it's not reality. You're not always going to wake up feeling like you're on top of the world. And what do you do on those days? If you have a plan that is perfect in every way, in every category, but you can't achieve it, and that's making you feel worse and further from your goal and making it so you don't even want to do it anymore, it is the worst possible plan you could have, even if it's the best possible plan. So I would recommend making a plan, not just for your best days, because you will have those. You'll have days that you are your best, but you will also have days that you are your worst. And more than anything, you'll have days where you are just average, right? That's why it's average. So you want to make plans, whether that's nutrition plans, workout plans, even sleep schedules for your like most average self, and then have some situations for your not best self, so that even on days where you're not feeling amazing, you can still take steps towards your goal, because all of those little steps add up a lot. The next thing that I would do, which is very different than what I did back in the day, was I would reverse engineer my maintenance calories. Because when a lot of us start on these goals, we are so gung-ho about, I'm going to do this right, I'm going to do this perfectly, I'm not going to screw this up. We often go to a calculator. And I've talked many times on the channel why I'm not a big fan of calorie calculators. Although they can be a good ballpark, there's so much margin for error in them. Even in our own inputs, you have to be very honest with yourself when you're using them. And then there's also a fair number of outliers who are just that those number of calories are not going to work for you. They might need to be higher, they might need to be lower. Those calorie calculators are just a ballpark. And what is a much better way of doing things is to actually just track your food for a week without trying to change anything. And you might be like,
Danny, but I want to start now.
Listen, if you have 90 pounds to lose, you've probably been in this situation for a long time. You didn't just get here yesterday, right? You can give it a week to do this right. Track your calories without deliberately changing anything, so you have an idea, okay, this is how many calories my body requires to more or less maintain where I am right now. Let's create a deficit from that number. If you find out that your body requires 2,600 calories to maintain where you are right now on average, then you go to 21 or 2,200 calories, you are going to have a much better time than if you go into a calculator online, say, I want to lose 2 pounds per week, and it spits out the lowest number that it can spit out. In most cases, 1,200 is what it's going to spit out. You might be able to do that for a few days, but you're going to snap, you're going to go crazy, you're going to feel like garbage, you're going to quit, and then you're going to end up gaining back anything you did lose and then some. And I did that. I had a 1,200 calorie goal, and it wasn't even a goal, it was a cap. I wasn't even trying to get to 1,200 calories. I was trying to stay below it. Did I lose weight? You're damn right I did lose weight. I felt like garbage. I could barely do my job. I was regularly binge eating and thinking there was something wrong with me. Not wrong with the plan, right? It's always me there's something wrong with, not the plan. Like I said, there were lots of ups and downs along the way, but that weight loss that I lost in that way never stuck. It never stuck. I kept trying it though, because that's what every calculator kept saying I needed to do. I wanted to lose 2 pounds a week. That's a 7,000 calorie deficit per week just to do that. That's just math, guys. If a responsible calculator should be like, no, you can't do that. That's a terrible idea, but it's just numbers. They can't do that. So reverse engineering by finding your actual maintenance and creating the deficit from there is going to give you so much better results. If I could go back and start again, I would not cut out foods that I love right from the beginning. I, at one point or another, had cut out everything. I mean, I was already vegan, and that was easy. Being vegan is super easy for me because it's an ethical decision. I don't even see animal foods like food. To me, it might as well be wax fruit in a bowl. It's just not food to me. That part, easy. But at all different points, I cut out sugar. I cut out oil. I cut out salt. I cut out gluten. I cut out soy. I cut out sweets. I cut out fried foods. I cut out pizza. I cut out soda. I cut out drinking. I cut out everything at one point or another, sometimes many of those at once, because I did not understand the concept that it had nothing to do with the actual food itself. It had everything to do with the calorie deficit as to whether or not I was going to lose weight. So I just kept thinking if I cut out the right magical food or magical food group, that weight loss would suddenly become easy. I wouldn't have cravings. I would have clear glowing skin and beautiful hair and all blah, 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 blah. All the things people said were gonna happen. Clean eating was at its absolute peak when this was going on. So anytime I did have something that maybe had some added sugar to it, even if it was like a protein bar with added sugar, I felt terrible. I felt so guilty about it, and that guilt and shame eventually would lead me to a place where, let's say I was at a party and there was a bowl of chips and dip or something, and I'm just trying to be polite, or someone made me something specifically, and I'd start with the intention of just having a few bites, but I would eat so much of it. I would binge. That's what it was. I would binge because I had felt restricted from foods that I had wanted for so long, because that never felt easy to me. Like I said, veganism, that felt easy to me. Giving up cookies forever, that never felt easy. That felt terrible. And it was never going to be realistic. There was never a chance in hell that I was never going to have a cookie again. If I had just understood the principles of weight loss and fat loss from the beginning and found a way to work small amounts of these things I loved into my plan from the get-go, I could have saved myself, oh my God, guys, I could have saved myself probably like 8 years of suffering with this absolutely horrific relationship with food. So I know it sounds counterintuitive to, for example, like keep some cookies in your plan, keep some chocolate in your plan, whatever it is that you love, but it makes a world of a difference. Now, if there's stuff that is super easy for you to cut out and you know that it's just like calorically dense and not like nutritionally sound, then go ahead and cut it out if it's something that you don't care about. A good example was soda. In my house, we had soda all the time. All the time. We didn't even drink water. We just drank soda. But I didn't actually care that much about soda. So like cutting out soda, that's not something that I was ever gonna miss. Cutting out pizza, that would have been something that I did miss. So you gotta know yourself. What are you and are you not willing to live the rest of your life without? Oh boy, the next one that I would do is I would focus on protein. I didn't do this at all. Guys, in my initial weight loss journey, I did not do this at all. This and the next one were, I think, probably the biggest mistakes that I made that were not actually fixable. So if you take any two away from this one and the next one, if you get this wrong, like I did for years, you're kind of stuck with the ramifications of that, I would say, forever. Pay attention to your protein. I was vegan. I was a relatively new vegan. I had only been vegan for a couple years at that point, and I was still very much of the mindset that the world was obsessed with protein, but you didn't actually need to worry about protein at all because that was just like propaganda from the US government to make us eat more protein or whatever it was I thought at the time. And, you know, I'm not saying there's no truth to that. There's a lot of lies about protein out there for sure. But if you are in a caloric deficit and you are not eating enough protein, you are going to lose weight. A good chunk of it's going to be muscle. That is one of the worst things that could happen in any weight loss situation, would be to be losing significant amounts of muscle. And when you don't eat enough protein, that is exactly what is going to happen in conjunction with the next thing that I also didn't do. And what is going to happen is you might get to your goal weight. I did. And you might look in the mirror and be like,
what the hell? This is not what I had in mind. This is not what I was picturing.
Prioritizing protein is going to make you feel fuller, which is going to make your journey less obnoxious because you will be hungry less often when you are eating food that makes you feel fuller, which protein is the most filling macronutrient by far. Protein has the highest thermogenesis of all the macronutrients, which means you actually burn more calories eating protein than any other macronutrient. And it also is going to help you maintain your muscle while you are in a fat loss phase. Man, oh man, when I started implementing this, shortly after I reached my weight goal, then I started doing this. You know, it is over 20 years later and I still kick myself for this one and the next one, which the next one is I would strength train from day one. This is far and away my biggest regret in my entire fitness journey, is that when I initially started losing weight on purpose, I had a goal weight in mind. It was 130. Well, I got to 130 and I looked in the mirror and I was like, well, this is not what the other fitness models who are 5'7" and 130 look like. Why do I look like this? So I was like, well, just got to keep losing weight then. So I did. I lost more weight from there and I just kept looking like a smaller version of my larger self. I was the exact same shape, just smaller, still squishy, still no muscle tone to me whatsoever, which in hindsight, duh, of course there wasn't. Of course there wasn't. I wasn't doing anything to build or maintain muscle. Nothing. I wasn't strength training. I wasn't prioritizing protein. In hindsight, this is like the most obvious thing. But again, I was young. I was like 19 years old or something like that. And I didn't know. And I meet a lot of fully grown adults that still don't seem to understand this. And they have the same mindset that I had, which is I'll get to my goal weight. First, I just need to lose the weight. Then I'll worry about building muscle. That's exactly what I thought. First, I just got to get to the goal. I'll worry about the muscle thing then. 20 years later, this mistake still affects my physique now. And I've put on a lot of muscle since then. But if I had been actively strength training while I was still obese, while I was still overweight, I would have built so much more then than I can now. It's harder to build muscle when you're in a caloric deficit, but if you've never strength trained before, you can definitely do it. So not only will you lose the weight that you're creating with your nutrition, but your shape is going to be better. You're going to have more muscle, which makes you more metabolically active. You're going to be healthier for that reason alone, simply that you have more muscle. A lot of us have this kind of delusional thought that, oh, well, I already have plenty of muscle. You just can't see it under all this fat, right? That's what I thought too. Of course I have muscle. I played the sousaphone in the marching band. That thing is heavy and I carried it around all the time. Of course I have muscle. Guess what? No, I didn't. And if I did have any, I blew it in the dieting phase here. So bear in mind that strength training does not help you lose weight. Okay, the calorie burn during strength training is minimal. That's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because it's going to keep you healthier, it's going to keep you stronger, and from a vanity standpoint, it is muscle that makes you look fit, not being thin. I was thin. I was very thin. I looked like a rail. I looked like a waif. I did not look the way I wanted to look at all. It wasn't until I started building muscle that everything changed in the way my physique worked. And also because I had more muscle, I was able to eat more, which after losing 90 pounds is very, very exciting. So if you take one piece of advice, well, I guess it's two. Strength train, eat your protein. My God, what a difference. The next one's a little controversial. I would weigh myself daily rather than weekly. So a lot of people pick a day of the week and they weigh themselves once a week. And because they weigh themselves once a week, certainly you can do this. This is not wrong. It's not wrong to weigh yourself weekly, but there's a lot of, no pun intended, weight put on that one day's weigh-in when you only weigh yourself once every 7 days. When you weigh yourself daily, first, it can be scary. First, it can just feel like you're paying too much attention to the weight, which I get, and not everybody is cut out for the daily weighing thing. And if you find that it's making you stressed out or neurotic or anything like that, you shouldn't do it. But if you continue to take your weight daily, you're going to see the daily fluctuations, the daily ups and downs that happen naturally. Even if you stuck to your nutrition plans and your workouts like a glue, you'll see after you work out really hard, the scale might go up with some swelling. After you eat a particularly low carbohydrate day, the weight might go down because of water. Oh, you went out with friends last night and had a late meal? The scale might be up. When you have these daily weights, you get to see the trends. And I personally find that seeing and understanding the trends of the scale really takes the sting out of those higher numbers. And if you track them and plot them on a graph, what you're looking for is to see it come down over time. You're not looking for every single day for it to be a little bit lower. That's completely unrealistic. But if you happen to do your one weekly weigh-in on a day that the scale happens to be up, you might feel like you made no progress that week and you blew it, even if you hit a new low 3 or 4 days ago, but you didn't see it because you didn't step on the scale. If I could go back in time and do it again, I would dig into the psychological reasons of how I got there in the first place. I said lifestyle plays a huge role. It definitely does, more than genetics in my opinion. But most of us don't become obese without having a pretty messed up relationship to food in the first place, even if you didn't realize it. I never thought I had a messed up relationship with food. I just thought I liked to eat and I could put it away with the best of them. I worked at Pizza Hut when I was a kid, and I remember I would bring home, extra large pizzas. They didn't have cheese on them, but sauce and lots of veggies, and I could eat the whole thing. And it didn't even think twice about it. I didn't feel guilty about it. I didn't feel any kind of way about it, actually. But looking back, that's not normal behavior. Why was I doing that? And the answer is going to be different for everybody. But I mentioned earlier, when I started deliberately trying to lose weight, I was not just trying to lose weight, I was trying to become somebody else. Not that I didn't like myself before, but I thought I could be better. And ultimately, 20 years later, there's no question I definitely did achieve that, but there were so many dark spots in there where I had to face the reality that I had a bad relationship with food. I used food the way some people use drugs. I used it to get away from bad feelings. I used it to basically numb myself out. And anytime something hard or painful or stressful came up, that was the first place my brain went. Wasn't call a friend, talk to somebody, go for a walk, get in therapy. It was, there's cake in the fridge. As long as you have that pull every time you feel strong emotions, as long as you have that pull. And I mean, I don't want to, I still feel that sometimes, like I still think that sometimes, but now I recognize it early on enough to be like, we're going to find a different strategy here. We have other tools now. As long as that is your only tool or the only tool that you reach for, you are going to struggle with your relationship to food, relationship to your body, and probably your weight until you get that particular aspect of things under control. And at the time, while I was struggling with this, bear in mind, I had cut out entire food groups. I was eating a super low calorie diet, like no kidding, I was binging. Shocking. I was binging under good circumstances. God forbid something stressful happened. The binging got out of control. And I didn't, again, say, oh, my plan sucks. Oh, I need to dig into these psychological reasons. I said, oh, Danny, you weak piece of crap. Be more disciplined and you will have more success. And I couldn't have been more wrong, but it took me years to figure that out. And hopefully hearing this will prevent you from having years of the same problems. The next thing I would do is I would get help, but judiciously. Once I reached my goal weight, realized I didn't look the way that I wanted to look, decided to hire an expert to come on and help me, and I thought that I was quite judicious about it. She was a registered dietitian, she was vegan herself, she was in outstanding shape, and some of the advice that I received was absolutely horrific advice about, I had to eat clean. I was lucky to be getting away with eating protein bars because when I was older, I wouldn't be able to get away with that. When I started struggling more with binge eating, the advice was like, oh, if you get strong binge urges, just have a rum and Diet Coke and take a Benadryl and go to sleep. And this was from a registered dietitian. Definitely you should be looking for people with credentials, for sure. But sometimes even people with credentials can be giving pretty terrible advice, and your spidey senses have to be on. And for the record, even at that time, there were a couple pieces of advice that made an eyebrow raise and made me go, I don't think this person has a healthy enough relationship with their body or food to help me. Like, I think they need more help than I do. And it was the catalyst that actually got me into deciding I wanted to become the best coach that I could be, was this particular person doing a lot of damage to myself and others. And unfortunately, I still see that in the industry a lot to this day. There's lots of very, very successful coaches out there in the vegan sphere giving very, very dangerous, harmful advice that comes back to bite most people in the ass at one point or another. So if something sounds extreme, it is. Like, if something in your gut is saying this sounds extreme, I don't think I can sustain this for very long, something feels off about this, you are probably right. Make sure that whomever it is you choose to get help from, you are already familiar with their philosophies, their theories, how they operate, how they speak to people, speak to some of their clients and see what their experience has been like with them. Just be careful out there. Like, I'm a huge advocate for getting help, getting coaching help, mentoring help, whatever kind of help. Huge advocate for it. But I also know there are a lot of bad apples out there, and because it is a 100% unregulated industry, people can say and do whatever they want. So you really got to be careful. The last thing I would do is I would take breaks in my weight loss. I wanted to lose 90 pounds like that, and everybody does, right? We all want to see this beautiful graph go down to our goal weight perfectly, but 90 pounds is a lot of pounds, my friends, okay? So if you had to lose 10 or 15 pounds, it's a very different journey than 90 pounds. You have to be much more meticulous the closer you get to your goal. At the beginning, you might be able to just cut out soda and get results, but as you keep going, it gets harder and harder, not easier and easier. It is not the same amount of effort that you're putting in at the beginning that you're putting in at the end. The end requires way more effort. And I have found with my own clients that have big weight loss goals, the best way to go about it is to maybe focus on losing 20 or 20, it depends on how much somebody actually has to lose, but let's say 90 in this case, maybe losing 20 or 30 pounds, then taking a couple months to just try to maintain that weight, because maintenance is way harder than loss, guys. Maintenance, getting to your goal and staying there is a bajillion, cotillion times harder than actually losing it in the first place. I bet a lot of you have lost huge amounts of weight before and not been able to maintain it, because that is way harder than actually doing it. Taking these little breaks along the way to kind of prove to yourself that you can maintain this amount of loss, that, you won't have to be on a diet in a deficit forever. It just reminds you of that. It gives you more energy, more strength, more willpower to continue on the deficit again when it's time. So if you can drop 25 to 30 and maintain for 8 weeks, and then do it again and maintain for 8 weeks, and then maybe the final, 20 to 30 pounds, that's going to come a lot slower, and that's normal. But taking breaks along the way is going to make the whole thing much more sustainable, and you're going to have a lot more tools in your tool belt to maintain where you're at when you get there. I really hope you guys found these tips helpful. If you did, please let me know, or if you have your own tips that I didn't mention that you think would be helpful, you can definitely leave those down below. If you're interested in any kind of one-on-one coaching, that is what we do here at Vegan Proteins. That is what we have done since 2008. We've helped over 2,500 vegans get in the best shape of their life, and we would love to have you be one of our success stories. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and we will leave the link to our application below, and you'll hear back from one of our coaches within a day. And if you like the video, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell, all the things I'm supposed to tell you to do at the end of a YouTube video, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.